Hello everyone, my name's Jeanette Camping from Henry Stewart Events, and I'm delighted to welcome you to our latest webinar, Monetizing the Archive, How Leading Brands Are Using DAM to Revitalize Their Businesses. It's great to see over 200 DAM professionals from 26 countries registered today. Just a couple of housekeeping points before we start. We'll take some questions at the end of the presentation, so please send them through on your GoToWebinar panel, and we'll take as many as possible in the time available. And the webinar is being recorded, and you'll all be sent to the link to the recording tomorrow. Now it's my great pleasure to welcome Perry Solomon from WoodWing. Thank you for joining us, Perry.
Thank you so much, Jeanette. It's wonderful to be here with all of you, and I'm pleased to be with two wonderful partners of WoodWing to share their experiences with using a digital asset management system to revitalize their business. I have Wajmah and David, and I'll allow them to introduce themselves momentarily, but since perhaps WoodWing is new for some of you, I thought I would take a brief moment to introduce WoodWing and our solutions. For over 20 years, WoodWing has helped publishers and brands elevate their storytelling. Across 3 continents and for over 1,000 customers, including many of the leading brands that you see here on the screen, as well as BuzzFeed and Essence, we help streamline collaboration and help content creators work more efficiently. WoodWing offers our value proposition around what we call content orchestration, living at the heart of the content value chain. WoodWing sits between places where content gets created and all of those sources and the channels where it goes out to, and provides a platform for internal and external stakeholders to work collaboratively to create stories and deliver the best possible content. We do this through 2 solutions. One is WoodWing Assets, our digital asset management platform, as well as WoodWing Studio, a multi-channel content creation tool. WoodWing Assets, our digital asset management solution, is where content creators, both internal and external, can create, manage, reuse, and share content. And WoodWing Studio is our workflow and publishing tool, streamlining the process of planning, producing, publishing, and repurposing content for both print, digital, and a wide variety of channels. And so, as I mentioned, I'm pleased to be joined today to share some wonderful experiences by Wajmah from BuzzFeed and David from Essence. I'd love to start things off by asking Wajmah if you first could introduce yourself and tell us a bit more about your background and the work you do at BuzzFeed.
Hi, everyone. So I'm the Director of Rights and Clearances at BuzzFeed, where we're not only known for our award-winning journalism, but also for addictive quizzes and listicles. I'm the Rights and Clearances Director, as I said, and my role is to help teach creatives what they can and can't do with images, video, audio, in editorial and branded content. I was originally hired at BuzzFeed to scale our creative teams worldwide. Once that was done, we realized that we needed somebody to oversee knowledge management in the world where laws are still catching up with how the internet and publishers are using content, like viral content and content from different social platforms. So I took on that responsibility.
Terrific. And I know we'll obviously get into a lot more detail momentarily. David, if you wouldn't mind, if you could share your background and your role at Essence as well, please.
Yes, hi. I'm the VP of Infrastructure Technology for Essence Communications. Essence is the leading media technology and commerce company serving Black women, and the brand has had multi-platform presences in publishing, experiential, and online. As the VP of Infrastructure Technology, I'm responsible for the integration of all the operational applications, hosting environments, and network infrastructure. I was brought on to Essence once they initiated the divestiture from TimeMake back in 2016, and they needed to develop basically a complete infrastructure setup.
Terrific. And David, to that point, as you mentioned, spinning off from being part of a large company with a lot of infrastructure is also happening at a time, obviously, when Essence is transforming itself from a legacy print business into many different ways that it engages with its audiences. Could you talk a bit more about that process and particularly some of the challenges you faced in helping to put that infrastructure in place?
Well, yes, we benefited from, as you say, a huge infrastructure support from TimeMake, where they had separate production, art, photography staffs that were feeding into the environment, and having to build that out in the new organization basically made Essence a 50-year-old startup. The magazine has been publishing since the early 70s and now is expanding into digital and has been managing experiential events. One of our largest events is our annual event down in New Orleans, 4th of July weekend, which is a huge attendance draw. This, however, is no indication of how difficult it's been to build this whole infrastructure from scratch, but obviously taking the lessons learned from Time Inc. and optimizing the best path for Essence.
Terrific. And Wajmah, obviously, as a pure play digital media company at BuzzFeed, obviously that segment of the media business has gone through tremendous transformation as well. Could you talk a bit about some of the infrastructure challenges that you faced, perhaps some that preceded you and some that are continuing to be issues that you're looking at and ways to address?
Sure. Unlike how David's description, we were definitely a startup and learning quite a bit about what tools make the most sense for the different teams that we're supporting. We initially started with very few tools and figuring out how to organize a lot of the content that we were creating. BuzzFeed creates thousands and thousands of articles, and I would say about 4 years ago, we moved into video production as well. So it was very much experimental, trying to figure out what tools we could use and leverage. Starting from scratch, very much so. We realized quickly that we needed a centralized place to house a lot of the content that we created. And BuzzFeed is unique, and in my experience, we've had very few actual photo teams with staff photographers. So as we started bringing on more staff photographers, we realized we needed a centralized system for content, a place where we could search content and also distribute it.
Right, and so Wajmah, when you think about sort of all of those different types of people in your organization, different places where those people are working, and sort of different experiences in using technology, how did sort of the idea of having that that centralized place, that digital asset management system to help manage all of that, how was that initially received?
It took quite a bit of time to convince everybody that this was something we absolutely needed. We were very much a startup, and we had a lot of young leaders at the company who had not worked with previous publishing agencies that had a centralized system for storing content and managing it and distributing it. So it was difficult in the beginning to get everyone on board. From creators, again, who didn't realize that there was an easier way to streamline the work. So yeah, it took a bit of convincing. What was really important to remind people was that having a database like this would not only save us money, it would also help us make money in the future. And once we were able to convince leadership that was the case, it became much easier to move forward with an asset management system.
Right. And David, I know we chatted in our prior conversations about sort of I guess in some ways the fact that coming from an organization where some of this infrastructure was in place, but then moving to being that 50-year-old startup, that there was a little bit of momentum and understanding behind it, but there still were challenges in convincing people that this was the right approach. Could you talk a bit more about that process and how you got people on board?
Well, the first part is that you really do need senior management buy-in in order to support the project. Without that, you're not going to proceed very far. We did have people who were knowledgeable of the product, but we were bringing on new staff to fill slots that weren't previous part of the organization, and they were not exposed to it. So in addition to having senior cooperation, we needed operational cooperation from the actual production staff. And what I felt was necessary was not only to understand the editorial process from a production workflow level, but also to try and target specific bottlenecks and issues that would show the production staff the benefits of the application. So we really embedded our technology team into the editorial process to help not only modify WoodWing to more of how we could utilize the best aspects of it within Essence, but also to find and help streamline processes. It took time, but we definitely had staff that were well knowledgeable in the WoodWing product, which I think was a significant plus. And it helped convince the operational teams of what the future benefits were.
Right. Were there any maybe examples you could think of? I think you had mentioned sort of a particularly challenging close for the magazine where that really came home, sort of the value of having that kind of cooperation and collaboration.
Well, yes, as you know, when closing a magazine, you have a specific target that you have to meet. Otherwise, you're subject to penalties from the printing houses. So nobody wants to miss that target. And on a number of closes when we first invested, we noticed that we were reaching specific bottlenecks at getting the product out to our production house, Quad. When we sat down with our production elements, we realized that specific people were allowing workload to tie up in what processes that could be automated. Certain redistribution of approval processes, which are embedded in WoodWing, and certain QCing of elements before they go out. And with sitting down with them and really understanding how we could add automation to simplify that process, we were able to eliminate those bottlenecks in order to make true believers of the production team.
Right. And you mentioned automation, which is something that you said it's dramatically improved your ability to hit those timelines. Sort of how did that get surfaced, and how did you decide how to prioritize which ones would be most helpful to the process?
Again, that goes down to embedding the technology team with the production staff. The technology needs to be a partner in this whole process in order for it to be effective. They can't just be there saying, here's the application, turn it on and have at. They really need to sit down and understand where the workflow goes and where the problems arise. So basically sitting through 2 or 3 closes to really identify each individual aspect and understanding where we can help is what really was the key.
Right. And Wajmah, obviously, as a digital company, effectively with sort of never-ending production cycles, BuzzFeed has its own sets of challenges around driving efficiency and making sure that you're hitting the timelines, whether that's for advertising commitments or sort of creative commitments and goals. Could you talk a bit about some of your thoughts on how this could help address efficiency and making sure that you're delivering content at the right time?
Absolutely. I don't know if everybody on the call realizes we only recently, I would say in the last few months, implemented this asset management system. But we're all, prior to having a system like this, so much of the work that we did was manual, and again, shockingly efficient in how we processed the work, even though it was pretty manual. But now that we have an asset management system in place, we've realized that getting content from A to Z is so much quicker. We've worked in silos. We've worked with tools that didn't house the proper rights information. The way content was searched for, it wasn't a visual search tool. What we're using this asset management system primarily is for photography right now. And in the past, a lot of the work was passed on via email. So having this process has absolutely made work so much quicker. We're able to have a shoot and upload images to one location, and the editors are able to pick what they like rather than having to walk over, rather than having to deal with Google Drive or large emails that are difficult to come through. So it has absolutely affected us positively from an efficiency standpoint. One thing that's really made a difference here is a big reason why we implemented a system was because of for rights information. We didn't have a place that housed rights along with the visual content. And again, this was one of the ways we were able to convince senior leadership that this was an important tool to implement. We are now able to, again, so much of BuzzFeed's business is sourcing viral content. And we're able to, when we do source viral content, we're able to upload it into the system, have the associated rights with it, and be able to share it company-wide so more people can use it. And that has really made it a difference from a legal perspective.
Well, that's terrific. And you had mentioned earlier that this is something that obviously not only saves cost and time, but also is something that then gives you potentially the opportunity to generate additional revenue. And I wonder if you could share a bit about some of your thoughts and ideas of ways that this could help not only improve the bottom line, but focus as well as growing the top line, which is increasingly important in today's economic climate.
Yeah, again, there's a lot of original content that BuzzFeed creates as well. We have art departments that create animations, comics, graphics, and then we have a photo team that also creates original photography. So the hope is that once we get the content into the asset management system, again, it's still very new to BuzzFeed, so we're still working on uploading content into the system. But the hope is, and we do have a lot of outside interest in reusing our content. Right now, again, very manual process. Emails come in, we respond to the emails. The emails that come in are usually requesting the content to be used. And it's anywhere from the Smithsonian for an exhibit or from Cosmo, for, because we shoot a lot of influencers who a lot of the major agencies haven't gotten to yet. We have very unique content to share. So currently it's very manual, but the hope is that once the content goes directly into the asset management system, then we're able to easily license content out. Again, still working on that process, but having an asset management system absolutely makes that process so much easier.
Yeah, terrific. So there's really a lot of potential in terms of how this can help grow that business, the content licensing, and ways to be able to get more value out of your original content as well. And David, I know that you obviously you mentioned that Essence sort of now a very very elaborate say multi-revenue stream business. How have you thought about some of these same opportunities as well in terms of being able to put content out into new distribution places and new lines of business?
Well, there's two aspects of it. One, we have a very large asset of what I'll call archival data that is accessible through the WoodWing system. We're digitized back to 2006 and are in the process of getting the remaining environment digitized back to 1974, which I believe is the first issue. 1970. Anyway, the digitization of our process has made it easier for getting our content online with a very efficient workflow, and also it allows us to partner with partners like Apple and Apple News, which our relationship with WoodWing basically helped us get to a very favorable position to get our content up in that environment. In addition to that, we also have been promoting our live stream events that we are doing in place of a lot of the physical experiential with the WoodWing implementation. We have a lot of video content that we're generating for online right now that's all going through the process and has made it very efficient in getting the content online.
Could you talk a bit more about the types of video that you are capturing, creating, and any thoughts, ideas about how that could be used more efficiently across all of your businesses?
One of the things that we are doing right now are live stream shoots for various of our what I'll call experiential events. We have wellness meetings that have started up since the COVID incidents. We've had a number of executive summits that we do processing through the system as well. And again, the live stream concerts that we're planning to generate now for our festival this coming 4th of July weekend are also going to be monetized through the system.
Right. And do you have some of the same challenges around rights and permissions and so forth that Wajmah was describing as sort of one of the key elements of their decision to use a DAM?
The rights are definitely managed through our legal environment, which is tied into the WoodWing system, but more so it's the distribution aspect that we focus on more so than the rights.
Right. Is this something that, how were you doing that previously?
Manually. That's the best way to describe it.
Yeah, sounds like that. From your hesitation, it sounds like that may have been a bit of a mess to be able to deal with it that way.
Yeah, fortunately, like I said, the efficiencies have made it a lot easier on us. We're able to operate with a leaner staff.
Right.
Yeah, you know, one of the things with, sorry to interrupt, one of the things with rights in particular, we weren't able to properly like license out our content without having a central place to keep the rights, or just easily associate the rights with the images. And you know, we too were doing it manually. I think that's the first step in getting content licensed out. You need to know what you can actually sell. And having a database like Elvis, that's the tool we use, really was it has been a game changer there.
Wajmah, could you talk a bit more about kind of what is that? What is the way that the people who are sort of tasked with that challenge of wanting to sell but needing to know what to sell? How do they? Sort of how did you convince them that this would be valuable to them? And like anything in the way that we work, getting people to change habits can be difficult. Can you talk a bit about those conversations and as you plan for things for the future, how would you hope to be able to convince more people in the organization that this is the right way to work?
Sure. Again, like we're working with really unique content. It's viral content. We're working with regular users. It's a UGC work from different social platforms. So the first process is like, how do you convey the information to your average person out there who's created some very cool video or some very fun image? So that was part one, is making sure that we had something in the system that was easy to understand, legally sound. So that was step one, and the tool, we were able to clearly organize that information. So based on how we wanted to use the content, the folks who did go out and reach out and ask for permission were armed with very simple language to use, and were able to convey the type of use to users out there, social media influencers and such. So that's one way that the tool absolutely helped. And then the other, having that information already in the tool, we were able to associate a certain type of right to videos and images. So that was the second part. And then from the way we structured the permissions in the tool, it's very clear to see what can be sold for certain purposes. We're not like a CNN where we're out there shooting original content always. I mean, that's not always the case. We shoot quite a bit of original content, and even having the permissions associated with that is really important, and that's in the tool as well. But the biggest issue was being able to associate rights with the UGC content. And once we were able to convince our licensing team of how easy this was, I mean, it did take a lot of work up front. I think that's one of the biggest challenges when you're using the system to house rights, is understanding how to structure that. And I think a lot of companies struggle with that. In my previous experience with agencies like ABC and AOL, that was the hardest part. So it's a lot of upfront work to make sure that the rights are structured properly, but it makes it so much easier than moving forward to be able to say, this content can be used for editorial purposes, this content has been cleared for branded purposes, and so on.
Right. No, that's terrific, and I certainly could imagine that as you in the organization is really being able to sort of change the way that people think about the potential of the content that you're aggregating, content that you're creating, and that that you're able to really take that leadership position in communicating a better way of working and the revenue potential from that type of approach, which is great. I will say to the audience, we're going to go a little bit longer. I know David has a story to tell about a particularly challenging experience, which we'll get to, but we do encourage audience members, if you have any questions, to please go ahead and send them to us, and we will do our best to get to as many of them as we can. David, I know that we haven't yet talked in this discussion, Wajmah, as well, about obviously the tremendous impact of COVID on how we work and obviously the future of all of our businesses. Certainly, teams working, moving from a centralized to a remote environment has been a challenge for every organization. David, I know you had a particular challenge at Essence in that you had a very big plan going into the year for the 50th anniversary of the brand. And obviously all of the impact of COVID threw a lot of that into the wind. I wonder if you could share a bit more about how this impacted your business and in particular your plans for the 50th.
Absolutely. What I'd like to start with is I have a substantial background in my publishing environment with disaster recovery and business continuity. And when I came to Essence, my intent was to build an environment that allowed for not only what I'll call remote content contribution on a very large scale, because we were doing live events all over the country. We had contributors all over, but I also wanted to mitigate the cost of maintaining infrastructure in our environment. And WoodWing hosted solution was the perfect solution for that. That said, as COVID hit in mid-March, we were literally in the middle of starting the close for our 50th anniversary issue, obviously a milestone for the organization. When you stop the opportunity for everybody to get together and close a title and basically force everybody to work from home, you have to rely on not only on the digital workflow, but also secondary communications like Slack and email, et cetera, in order to keep this going. But what we were able to accomplish, and Perry, if you could just pop up that cover that I sent you earlier, our 50th anniversary was truly a milestone in that everything was done 100% remotely, including the cover shot from Naomi Campbell, who shot this herself and basically helped us get this major issue out. It was a significant challenge for selecting the photos, selecting the layouts, all doing it remotely, all managing approval processes throughout the workflow with the WoodWing application and Elvis, and just basically a real testament to the solid environment that WoodWing provided us.
Terrific. Yeah, I think you'd look at that and you'd be hard pressed to think that this was something that she shot herself and that was done completely completely as the plan B as opposed to the original plan. And I think a testament to both the team as well as the supporting infrastructure to help make all of that possible. Did you receive any feedback from readers, from your audience about the 50th?
Absolutely. The response was tremendous. They were really taken with the fact that this was a remotely produced product. And again, working with the talent in order to get this done, they were really understanding of what was needed to be done, and our production team just really got it right. So that's something that we can really applaud not only the people using the tool, but the tool itself.
Just out of curiosity, did Naomi herself get a chance to log in and share these assets with the team?
Yes, we had a process where we could just have her drop it right into Elvis, gave her a login, and those photos were then edited online.
Terrific. That's a great story. I didn't know the answer to that question about whether she actually had a chance to interact with you through WoodWing, and that's great to know. Wajmah, obviously your business as well, disrupted, transformed because of COVID and the impact on work and the overall business. Any thoughts you could share about how how either things that are in place or things that are planned have been impacted by the new reality of distributed work?
Yeah, you would think that convincing folks to use an asset management system is a no-brainer. And I remember like one of the arguments that I made was it's the difference between snail mail and email. Email was revolutionary, and this and having an asset management system where you can deliver content is definitely is also a revolutionary concept, even for such a huge tech startup like BuzzFeed. What we've been able to do, very much like how Naomi was able to drop images into the tool, we've found extremely helpful when working with photographers in different locations, since everybody's working from home. It just makes transferring files so much easier. And again, in the past, we've had so many in-person trainings on what you can and can't do with content. What we've done with Elvis is that when we've sourced viral content, when we have really interesting original content to share with the company, we can put a blast out to all the users. We can also, from a permissions perspective, open it up to all users to use. It saved time. In the past, what we've done is we've sometimes had multiple people reach out to the same person to ask for permission to use their content. And there have been times where we're all sitting in the newsroom or sitting close together, and we're able to say, hey, by the way, I've taken care of this. You don't need to reach out. We don't have that. So being able to blast out using the tool has really made life much easier.
Yeah, no, that's terrific. And as I said, one of the things that we're all learning is, what are the things that we now do differently that really are good business practices that we should continue to do going forward, and certainly having a common way for people to know the status, to know the latest updates on permissions, rights, so that you're not sort of creating unnecessary communication or confusion. It's certainly something that I think everyone benefits from. We got a first question. I'm sorry. Please go ahead. Wajmah?
I'm sorry, you dropped there. No, I was just saying that editing remotely has also been extremely helpful. Working with editors to approve content before publishing has within the tool has also made life much easier.
Mm-hmm. That's terrific. I wanted to turn now to a first question that we received from one of our audience members. Wajmah, this one is for you, and this is a follow-up to your question, your comment, and your description of the rights. The question is whether you are storing the rights data directly in the metadata in the DAM, or rights inherited from talent agreements associated to the asset, of which there could be many. Maybe you could describe a bit about kind of how you brought that metadata into the system, including some that are in perhaps fairly long talent agreements.
So what's great about the tool, I'll focus on talent agreements, and it's not just talent agreements. We also have, contracts with freelance photographers as well. What's great about the Elvis tool is you can associate PDFs of the contracts with the visual assets. So that's how we do it. We marry the two files together. So it's, in the past, what we've done is we've had, drives where we've had a credit for the image, which showed up just as an icon. We really couldn't tell what the image was unless you double clicked it. And then we'd go into the metadata, find out who the photographer was, the shoot date, and then go into a different folder to find the associated contract for that shoot. So Elvis has made life so much easier, where we've entered the metadata, just the basic metadata, who shot it, just most of what's in the IPTC field of an image, but then associated the longer contract with it. And also if there are any restrictions we've added that to the metadata. So then it requires people to go into the contract to see more information. That's usually, again, for freelance photographers that we use, or additional talent and materials releases that we have. For images, it's much easier. Everything is right there in the metadata. We tried to make the metadata fields for rights in particular very robust. And again, I think it's a challenge for so many companies, and you need somebody who understands, and there are different types of rights language that you can incorporate. That's another, I think, a challenge for a lot of companies. It's something they don't think about ahead of time. Who can actually see the content? So permissions, in addition to rights metadata. So for images, we've created a pretty robust set of metadata fields that you have to enter. And that's how we handle, again, the two very different things: the marrying of assets, PDFs, contracts, along with the visuals, and then if there isn't additional PDFs to attach, the metadata fields are robust enough that you can tell what you can and can't do with the content.
No, that's terrific. And I did just want to mention, thank you. I did just want to mention, and I apologize for not doing it sooner for those in the audience. Wajmah and David have referred to Elvis, which was for many years the name of the product that we're talking about, WoodWing's digital asset management solution. I referenced WoodWing Assets, which is the new name of that solution, and so it is the same product. And so apologies for any confusion around that, but it is the new name is WoodWing Assets, but this is the same product that she's referring to. One of the things that a question that had come in earlier was sort of a more open-ended question around sort of surprises. So obviously you go into these projects with sort of a plan, and then you begin to work. I was wondering if David or Wajmah, if you could recall, perhaps a surprise, either positive or negative, that was different than what your original expectations perhaps had been around what you would get out of the solution.
David?
Yeah, I'm thinking. The pleasant surprise was the depth of knowledge and level of expertise that the WoodWing implementation team presented us during the project. I worked with a specific set of implementers who were so helpful during the initial phases. So I will say that WoodWing has an excellent depth of bench when it comes to the actual implementation.
I would definitely second that. And this is no offense to David, but we talked about this in the past. It's so hard to often get onto a tech team's roadmap, especially, I found that to be true at almost every company that I've worked at. So what was great about Elvis and WoodWing, sorry, I keep saying Elvis, about WoodWing in particular was, once the tech team helped us find the solution, approve the solution, and manage the at least the initial portion of onboarding the tool, we were left to our own devices, and we were able to count on WoodWing to help us implement the tool and help us find solutions. Again, as we went through, we realized, again, we were trying to service several different teams, and it's often hard to find one tool that can do absolutely everything. And WoodWing, their solutions team was able to walk us through that process.
Yeah, Wajmah, I would definitely agree with you that IT is not always an effective partner when it comes to implementing a project that is not what they would consider front and center on their radar. But I've always felt that, you know, if that represents a substantial portion of your income, then as IT, you better focus on it. So
right.
Our partnership with the editorial content creation team was from the very beginning a deep-seated relationship. So that definitely helped. We were there for them after WoodWing left. The two techs that I have working in support are, and the WoodWing team knows them deeply because they worked heavily with the initial implementations that I dealt with at the time. They had multiple titles. So their breadth of knowledge were definitely an asset to keeping this train running right.
Yeah, for us, this is, you know, the licensing portion of licensing our content it's an experiment. You know, we were able to make some projections on what the, you know, future monetization was, but they weren't really, you know, hard numbers. And I think that was the difficulty in getting tech and IT to really commit to this. I'm confident that it is going to be a game changer for us from a licensing perspective. So, you know, being able to get at least the support that we did was amazing, and then having WoodWing carry us through implementation, and even, you know, the one-off questions, really, it was extremely helpful. But I agree, I think it's so important to have tech, IT be a partner throughout.
Perfect. No, thank you both for that, and of course, thank you for the kind words about the team that's been helping you with your implementations as well as your ongoing success. One more that came in, and certainly encourage the audience to share other questions that you may have. One other question that came in did get at metrics. You know, Wajmah, you had mentioned sort of the business case and revenue potential. Are there other metrics, you know, either David or Wajmah, that you could talk to that either you now have access to in terms of being able to understand your content better, or other ways that you're measuring the effectiveness of the solution?
I mean, I can go ahead and answer. Again, it's a very new tool. We're still trying to, you know, get content uploaded into it, but just to be able to see how much content the teams are creating. Again, we have it's so many different companies. We have the teams are siloed, so it's very difficult to understand how much content is actually being created and what's available to be licensed in the future. So something as simple as that is huge for us. Now I'm able to say to get more tech involvement, to get more creators involved in uploading content to it. We can say, hey, photo team A has been able to upload X number of images, and we've been able to license so many and generate this much revenue. Why don't you guys also start doing the same? Start using the tool and joining. So that's where we've started so far. Those are the metrics we currently use. But my hope is, again, from a rights perspective as well, we're able to say, you know, in being able to track rights better, we're able to mitigate copyright risk in the future.
Yeah, so it's not just an offensive approach, but as well being able to ensure that you're protected, and as well have sort of the audit and documentation to be able to show why you took whatever action you did, or why you didn't take whatever action you didn't, because you know that there could be ramifications as well.
Right.
Yeah, Our metric is more along the line of cost savings that we can actually express to management, saying that, we did not need, and I hate to use this as an example, but it's a valid example. The number of staff in order to produce a magazine can be reduced by X because of the efficiencies or the time to get the production online, so as not to cause delay charges, are definitely immediate metrics that you can show senior management as a cost savings for what you're investing in the product.
Yeah, no, thank you, David. Obviously, this is the reality of business today is being both efficient with what you have and finding ways perhaps to create additional efficiencies and to be able to do more with less. An unfortunate reality in today's economy. We did have one other question that had come in. One of our audience members was interested about the potential of having a third party create metadata. And whether that was something that you've thought about or perhaps in other places have done, and sort of your thoughts on that versus perhaps having teams in-house that could help with that.
I always say that like a tool is only as good as the metadata somebody enters into it. And I've found it so hard to get people to enter the proper metadata. So we have looked into AI keywording solutions. We haven't implemented anything yet, but I think that becomes really, really important in the future. The WoodWing tool has a functionality where you can add metadata to multiple images at once, which is super helpful. But I actually don't know of outside companies who do the metadata entry. We've tried, again, at other companies, we've tried outside solutions, but it's sometimes hard. A lot of the solutions were overseas, and some of the metadata, it was not as clear as you would think it would be. So that's definitely something that would be helpful, just because it is hard to get in-house creators to add the proper metadata. But then again, I think that what's important is when you're building out the tool that you make it as easy to use and as add as many drop downs as you possibly can, so they don't have to think about entering customized metadata. Requiring fewer fields to be mandatory is also helpful. And then again, we've just had folks just manually enter metadata. But again, it's incredibly important. It's also something that's really, really difficult to get people to do as a part of their workflow.
Just from an IT perspective in general, dealing with metadata and other applications, I found that when we did look to outside sources, and especially if they were foreign sources, sometimes vernaculars or how the language is used would have a significant impact on how they enter the metadata. Consistency is huge. So I agree with Wajmah's assessment on that.
Terrific. Good. Well, I know we're getting close to the end of our hour. I know I've enjoyed immensely the conversation. I feel like I'm learning more every time I speak to the two of you about benefits you're seeing and opportunities ahead for your businesses as well as for digital asset management as a category. I think we're gonna begin to wrap up now. I just wanted to leave up the open-ended question for both of you, David and Wajmah, about sort of longer-term goals or anything in particular beyond what you've shared that are perhaps on your longer-term roadmap for ways that you can get more value out of these assets.
Well, one thing we are looking at doing at this point in time is digitizing the remaining content that we have going back how many years? 50 years at this point. So that has the potential for resale in huge amounts of undiscovered assets or assets that have been buried for decades that would definitely have value.
We don't have the same database as Essence does. So we're looking forward. Having a place like this for original content to be uploaded to will help us, again, be able to see where we're excelling in terms of like creating a visual brand. And the hope is just to have this help us expand our creative teams, expand our photo teams, expand the people creating original work. So that's the hope going forward, is that this will encourage people to create more original content to distribute throughout the company, and also distribute to people who are interested in licensing it.
Well, that's wonderful. As I hear you both talk about these perhaps longer term plans, I'm thinking that perhaps we could set a date that we'll do this together again in 3 to 5 years, and we can hear about those exciting initiatives and the success that hopefully it's brought to your respective businesses. So hopefully you'll be willing to get back together again and have that conversation with this audience in the future.
Absolutely.
Well, I do expect to see more advancements from WoodWing as we go forward, and definitely more opportunities for us to take advantage of those products that you'll be offering.
For sure. Maybe metadata entry can be one of those things, guys.
Terrific. Well, good. Well, again, I'd like to thank you both. I enjoyed this immensely. It really was wonderful to have a chance to hear about your experiences and the opportunities that you see for your business through the use of digital asset management. I'd like to thank the audience for joining us today. We know obviously everybody has lots of things on their virtual calendars to be part of, and we appreciate so many of you joining us today. As Jeanette mentioned, the recording of this will be available for you, I believe sent to you by tomorrow. And WoodWing, of course, is always interested in hearing from you, both through our website as well through our social media. So I'll say thank you again to all for joining us. Thank you, Wajmah. Thank you, David, for your insights. And I hope everyone has a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for allowing us to participate.
Perfect. Thanks so much.